This is the story of a servant who gets involved in an affair with a king's wife. When the king finds out, the servant escapes to save his life and takes a job at a church. However, he is unaware that the seemingly innocent nuns of the church are actually leading dull and lonely lives. His arrival unexpectedly brings excitement and joy into their lives, and he also starts enjoying the company of the nuns. The story begins with a nun named Fernanda, who is seen leading her donkey through the forest towards the church. Upon reaching the church, another nun named Ginevra approaches her and asks where she was last night. Fernanda explains that, as always, her donkey had run away, and she spent the entire night searching for it. Ginevra remarks that she locks the gate securely every night, so how does the donkey keep escaping? While they are talking, the church gardener, Lurku, passes by and greets them with a good morning. Instead of responding kindly, they scold him and send him away. Afterward, all the nuns gather in the church to pray. Later, the superior nun, Sister Maria, asks Fernanda where she had been the previous night. Fernanda repeats her explanation about the runaway donkey. Sister Maria listens but says nothing. However, there's more to this recurring incident with the donkey than meets the eye. Meanwhile, we see another nun, Alicia, sitting in her room sewing. She looks sad because she doesn't want to stay in the church. She dreams of living a better life outside. Elsewhere, Sister Ginevra is seen talking to Sister Maria when she notices a strange ritual described in a book. Curious but slightly unnerved, she reads a few lines before putting the book aside. At the same time, Alicia's father visits her in the church. During their conversation, he mentions that he is looking for a suitable groom for her, but laments that every good match demands an exorbitant dowry. Alicia suggests that he could reduce the church donations to save money for the dowry, but her father disagrees, saying it wouldn't be right. He encourages her to focus on her career, assuring her that whether she marries or not, he wants her to live a fulfilled life. This leaves Alicia disheartened, because her dream is to get married and lead a beautiful life. The next day, we see the three nuns together carrying the clothes they have made. Alicia shares her conversation with her father with the other two nuns, and they all feel saddened by her predicament. One day, she notices that Lurko is staring at them with strange eyes. Feeling angry, the three of them lash out at him, venting their frustration by storming into his space and throwing out his belongings. When this doesn't satisfy their rage, they even start beating him. Meanwhile, we see Father Tommaso of the church, who is on his way to the market with some garments made by the sisters. On his way, Lurko meets him and says, "Forgive me, Father, but I no longer wish to work in this church." The father tries to persuade him, assuring him that nothing like this will happen again, but Lurko is adamant and walks away. Shortly after, we are introduced to a landlord named Bruno, whose house is located a few miles from the church. Bruno is having dinner with his wife, Francesca. However, Francesca's attention is fixated on their servant, Masetto, who is also gazing back at her. The way they look at each other clearly suggests there is something going on between them. Later that night, we see Francesca and Masetto together in bed, making love. Francesca confesses, "My husband doesn't satisfy me. He just talks about his wealth and grandeur." The two continue their affair until they hear Bruno approaching. Panicked, Masetto tries to escape by jumping out the window, but Bruno sees him from behind and begins to chase him. Masetto quickly runs back to the servants' quarters and pretends to be asleep before Bruno arrives. Bruno starts checking all the servants one by one to figure out whose heartbeat is racing. When he reaches Masetto, he becomes suspicious, but can't identify him due to the darkness. To ensure he finds the culprit in the morning, Bruno cuts a small patch of hair from Masetto's head. However, as soon as Bruno leaves, Masetto cunningly cuts small patches of hair from his fellow servants to avoid detection. The next morning, Bruno lines up all the servants and inspects their hair. To his frustration, everyone has small patches of hair missing, making it impossible to identify the guilty one. Realizing the man is clever, Bruno issues a warning to all the servants. "If I find the man I'm looking for, I'll make sure he pays for this." To prevent further mischief, he orders all the servants to have their heads shaved completely. Later, Bruno and Francesca sit down to eat. Bruno warns his wife, "What you did was unacceptable. I know you're involved in all this. If I find that servant, not only will I take care of him, but I'll deal with you as well." A girl, Francesca, is not afraid of Bruno at all. She confidently tells him that he won't be able to do anything to her. Meanwhile, Bruno notices his wife signaling Masetto, which makes him realize that his wife is having an affair with the servant Masetto. Later, Masetto is busy with his work when Francesca comes over to him. She approaches Masetto and tries to forcefully create an intimate moment with him. However, this time, time, Bruno witnesses the scene from a distance. Enraged, Bruno orders his men to catch Macedo and bring him back to him. Macedo, realizing that Bruno has seen everything, tries to save his life and starts running away. Bruno's men chase after him but fail to catch him. While escaping through the forest, Macedo comes across Father Tommaso, who had accidentally overturned his cart on the way to the market due to being slightly intoxicated from wine. His clothes had also fallen into a river. Seeing this, Macedo helps the father by collecting all his clothes, which makes Father Tommaso very happy. When the father learns that Macedo has no place to live, he takes him to the church. He gives Macedo some food and tells him that if he wants to stay in the church, he must pretend to be deaf and mute. Otherwise, the church sisters will trouble him a lot. The next morning, Father Tommaso introduces Macedo to Sister Maria and tells her that he has brought a man who is skilled in all kinds of work, but is deaf and mute. He suggests Macedo could replace Lurco for the chores. Hearing this, Maria agrees to hire Macedo for the work. From that day onward, Macedo begins working at the church. However, Sisters Alicia and Fernanda are unaware that Macedo has been hired. Fernanda mistakes him for an intruder and approaches him with an axe to threaten him, demanding to know who he is. Sister Alicia quickly brings Maria, who explains that Macedo is their new gardener and is deaf and mute. Fernanda, hearing this, lets him go. Later, Sister Maria informs Alicia and Fernanda about an incident where some robbers stole the clothes the sisters had woven when Father Tommaso was taking them to the market. She regrets that their hard work went in vain, but assures them that they will bring in more people to help with weaving so that more clothes can be made in less time. Afterward, Alicia is seen working with an elderly nun named Viola. During this time, a frame used for weaving clothes breaks, and Alicia goes to Macedo to get it fixed. Sister Ginevra sees Alicia heading towards Macedo and secretly follows her, keeping a watch on them. Alicia asks Macedo to fix the frame, and as he does so, she confides in him, expressing her feelings. She reveals that she doesn't want to stay at the church anymore and dislikes the weaving work. She wants to leave this place and live her life freely, but Macedo doesn't respond to her, even after hearing this, because he pretends to be deaf and mute in front of everyone. Alicia is aware that Macedo neither hears nor speaks to anyone. Later that night, Father comes to Macedo's room and asks him how his day went. He mentions that some of the sisters here can be quarrelsome, which might make it challenging to work with them. Macedo agrees, saying some sisters are indeed difficult, but he assures the father that he can handle his work. The father advises him to continue pretending to be deaf and mute around the sisters so they won't bother him much. Meanwhile, in her room, Fernanda is reading when a stone is thrown at her window. She opens it to see her childhood friend Martha visiting her. The two of them head to Alicia's room, where all three start drinking wine together. After a while, Sister Ginevra also joins them, and the group begins enjoying themselves. As they drink, they start discussing romantic topics. Martha shares stories about several men and mentions a special herb that, when used a certain way, can attract men. The others listen intently and laugh along with her. The next day, while Macedo is working, Alicia approaches him and says she made a handkerchief for him. She uses it to wipe his sweat and sits beside him, engaging in conversation. Inspired by Martha's romantic tales from the previous night, Alicia starts feeling romantic and ends up kissing Macedo. Seizing the moment, Macedo reciprocates her feelings, but the sudden ringing of the church bell makes him nervous. Alicia quickly composes herself and heads to the church to pray. During the prayer, Fernanda notices dirt on Alicia's dress and nails. In the next scene, Ginevra and Fernanda are washing clothes when Alicia arrives, looking very cheerful. She tells them she had a lot of fun last night. Fernanda, suspicious, asks why Alicia's clothes are so dirty. Alicia claims she was helping the new gardener with his work, which is why her clothes got dirty. However, Fernanda and Ginevra don't believe her, because Alicia is not known for doing any work. Fernanda, being clever, suspects that Alicia is hiding something. Later, we see Fernanda and Martha in the forest, searching for the special herb Martha had mentioned. They prepare a liquid by boiling the herb. Martha drops 2 drops of the liquid into Fernanda's eyes and makes a small cut on her finger to collect some blood, which she then smears on Fernanda's cheeks. Ginevra was secretly watching everything. After this, Martha and Fernanda go to Macedo's room, where Fernanda scares her by showing a knife. Then both of them try to attract Macedo towards them. Macedo finds their behavior strange and wonders what they are trying to do, but slowly, he too loses control. Eventually, the three of them indulge in passionate moments together. A while later, Martha and Fernanda leave the house. Outside, they meet Ginevra, who asks what they are doing there. They don't give her a direct answer and make an excuse to leave quickly. However, Ginevra suspects they are hiding something from her. The next morning, the head priest arrives at the church for a visit, and Father Tommaso and Maria welcome him warmly. Meanwhile, Macedo sneaks into Alicia's room, and they start their romantic affair again. Suddenly, Sister Viola walks into the room. At first, neither Macedo nor Alicia notices her presence, but when Macedo sees her, he exclaims, startling Alicia. Both of them panic due to Viola's unexpected arrival. Alicia quickly composes herself and helps Viola with her task while Macedo hides under the bed. Fortunately, Sister Viola is deaf and unable to understand what is happening. Later, Macedo quietly sneaks out of the room through the window. The next day, Ginevra sees Macedo resting and decides to attract him by making a special herbal potion. However, instead of applying it to his eyes as intended, she drinks it herself. In a trance-like state, she smears blood on her cheeks. Meanwhile, Alicia enters Macedo's room and confronts him about why he lied about being mute. Just then, hearing Ginevra's footsteps approaching, Alicia quickly hides in a corner while Macedo pretends to be asleep. Under the influence of the potion, Ginevra approaches Macedo and starts behaving oddly, trying to cling to him. However, when they hear Fernanda arriving, Ginevra hides in the same spot as Alicia. The two women are shocked to see each other. Fernanda then enters the room, ties Macedo up, blindfolds him, and threatens him with a knife. She drags him into the forest. Alicia and Ginevra secretly follow her. By the time they reach the middle of the forest, it is nighttime. They see a fire burning in the clearing, surrounded by several women dancing without clothes. Nearby, Macedo is tied up. Alicia whispers, "What are they doing?" Ginevra replies, "I once read about a ritual like this, where women sacrifice humans to gain witchcraft powers. Here we learn that Fernanda used to come here every day under the pretense of taking care of her donkey, and now Martha has also joined her. Martha and Fernanda are about to sacrifice Macedo when, out of fear, Macedo speaks up, saying, 'Let me go.' Hearing this, they realize that Macedo is neither mute nor deaf. Meanwhile, under the influence of alcohol, Ginevra starts taking off her clothes and dancing with the other girls, causing everyone to run away in shock. Amidst the chaos, Fernanda is about to sacrifice Macedo when Alicia arrives, snatches the knife from Fernanda, and saves Macedo, taking her donkey and fleeing toward the church. Upon reaching the church, she begins shouting that Fernanda is a witch. Hearing the commotion, Father Bishop comes outside, and Ginevra tells him everything, accusing Fernanda of witchcraft. Shortly after, Fernanda, Alicia, and Macedo arrive as well. Alicia tries to convince Father Bishop that Ginevra is lying and is only speaking nonsense under the influence of herbs. However, Ginevra insists she is telling the truth and accuses both Fernanda and Alicia of being involved with Macedo romantically. Hearing this, Father Bishop calls Sister Maria outside to ask for clarity. At the same time, Father Tommaso emerges from Maria's room, leaving everyone shocked. Father Bishop finally understands what has been happening in the church. Father Bishop then punishes each of them one by one and orders them to seek forgiveness from the court. Father Tommaso receives the harshest punishment for misusing his position as a priest. He is sent to a monastery that houses only men. Macedo is handed back to Bruno, whose soldiers take him into custody. Later, the three sisters, Ginevra, Fernanda, and Alicia, apologize to one another. Ginevra also asks Fernanda for forgiveness. The three of them then start worrying about Macedo, fearing Bruno might kill him. They decide to come up with a plan to rescue him. Bruno had locked Macedo in jail and went there to tell him, "I have handed my wife over to the dog so she can realize her mistake, and now it's your turn. I won't kill you. Instead, I'll keep you alive and torture you even more." Saying this, Bruno left the place. After he left, Macedo began pleading with the guards to free him, but they refused and started mocking him instead. A while later, the guards noticed a burning candle placed on a tortoise and began following it. In reality, the tortoise had been sent by the three sisters. As soon as the guards left, the sisters came and rescued Macedo. They replaced him with a dummy and dressed Macedo in the sisters' clothes. They then took him and escaped into the forest. Meanwhile, Maria was seen with her donkey as she went to meet Tommaso. Both were overjoyed because they had fallen in love and couldn't stay apart. Suddenly, they heard some noises and hid. Fernanda arrived, spotted the donkey, and wondered how it had come there, but Ginevra took her away. After they left, Maria and Tommaso came out of hiding. They realized that the three sisters had successfully rescued Macedo. Despite this, Maria and Tommaso remained focused on their love and walked off in a different direction. And with this, the story comes to an end.